Starting to wonder if my sense of pattern recognition is off. Most Joss Whedon produced shows don't really get going till their second season. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We are halfway through the second season of this show, and while it's on its hiatus before it comes back, I want to get my thoughts out about the second season because it's a big enough improvement that it's definitely worth pointing out. If you haven't seen my review and recap of the entirety of the first season of this show, short version is that it was very generic up until it integrated with the main Marvel Cinematic Universe and S.H.I.E.L.D. basically was taken apart by Hydra. Then it got more interesting, but I was really doubtful that I was even going to bother coming back for a second season. Well, I did, and I'm really glad. Now, talking about this thing, I am going to jump around. I'm not going to do this episode by episode, and I'm not going to have any real regard for whether or not anything I say is a spoiler. So if you're not currently caught up with the second season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you might want to tune out on this, unless you don't care, in which case, stick around. Right off the bat, this thing just was so much better than the previous season. One of the main things that it really has going for it is the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is reeling back on its heels a bit. Coulson especially is working much better. My preferred version of Coulson, honestly, is the version that we got in the movies. The guy who's in the field, who's seen enough that he's not automatically impressed by Thor or Iron Man, yet still has that little fanboy thing going on when he meets Captain America. I kind of like that as a field agent. Once S.H.I.E.L.D. started, it was very clear that, well, he's not just a field agent. He's gone through too much. He's been too important. He's come back from the dead, for crying out loud. They upgraded him for that. And last season, he was kind of this middle management guy, and it never really worked. It never felt right. Now, he's the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it works much better. Another thing this season got right immediately was it gave us a clear, identifiable villain in the form of Whitehall. I mean, we did not know much about this guy. We didn't know what his deal was. We knew he was a Nazi way back when, but we see him in modern day and he hasn't aged, so there's something weird going on there, but it gives us a face. We go, there's our villain. And that was one of the things that the first season really severely lacked. Because there was always talk of the clairvoyant, but it was kept in the shadows so long that by the time the reveal happened, I didn't really care anymore. And it was too nebulous to be threatening. They tried to make Raina threatening, but she's just not. She works for a certain amount of intrigue, but she's not intimidating. So there was a real kind of villain vacuum the first season. Now, of course, Whitehall at this point is actually out of the picture, and we now have Skye's father effectively taking over the villain role. Although talking villains, that means I need to bring up Ward. Now, I was really annoyed that they didn't kill Ward at the end of last season because I was positive this season they were gonna eventually let him out of jail or wherever he was and have some form of a redemption arc for him, which I felt very strongly that he did not deserve, and I still feel that. And thankfully, they didn't do it. No redemption. Not only did they not try and redeem him, they doubled down on the badness. I mean, flat out evil. I think if they weren't going to get rid of him at the end of last season, this was absolutely the way to go. And rather than try and get audiences to forgive the betrayal that he did of the team last season, they just make it that much worse that you feel like, oh my God, he knows this team and he got under their skin so bad and he's this bad. And just as a character, he's so much more interesting now. He was so generic before. I also like what they've done with Fitz Simmons, although I think they kind of wussed out on it a little bit. I mean, right off the bat with Fitz, the fact that he has suffered pretty severe brain damage from what happened to him at the end of the last season, that in and of itself immediately just makes him a more dynamic character. And then the fact that he was basically hallucinating a version of Simmons who was understanding and compassionate to him, that was really interesting. I honestly kind of wish that they had the real Simmons either get killed or not come back as soon as she did, because I really liked that dynamic where he was communicating with this other side of himself, and then as you start to realize that he even knows that's not the real Simmons, but he's still just embracing it because it's all he's got. It just made Fitz a way more interesting character than he was before. Simmons coming back, Simmons has been a wash. Now that she's not part of this archetypal power nerd duo, she's working better. She's slightly less generic now, but she hasn't kind of been elevated the way that Fitz has. Skye's also become fairly interesting. I mean, if you don't know the way what happened, particularly in that last episode before the break started, and how that ties into the Inhumans, I'm not gonna wreck that for you. Like I said, I'll spoil what's already happened. I won't spoil future stuff. But knowing that they're already planning an Inhumans movie, I would not have thought they would have tossed so much very fundamental lore of the Inhumans into the TV show that they're going to have no guarantee enough people watch and then go see the movie. I mean, when they make the Inhumans film, they can't depend on people having seen stuff from the show. So I never would have thought they would have put so much essential stuff into the show. So power to them for doing it. Agent May's just kind of coasting, but honestly, she was awesome last season, so she continues to be awesome. I also gotta give this show props for killing off at least one major character, because they took out Trip. Then there's the New Blood, and we've gotten some good stuff there too. Because now we've got Bobby Morse, which is a nice additional bit of just sort of badassness that has a different feel to it from Agent May, so that works and it doesn't feel redundant. And we've also got the mercenary kind of character, her ex-husband, who is also just a lot of fun. I think it's kind of nice in these situations where things are very dire and everyone's taking things seriously to have at least one character who's kind of going, "You're kidding me, right?" And saying it with sincerity. And just overall, really, the show has become something that I would now actually recommend people see. I would actually almost say to skip season 1. You pick up enough of what's been going on just from the way things move forward to season 2. Start with season 2 and just go. Or if you really have to, pick up from the point in season 1 where it links up with Captain America the Winter Soldier. This season, it feels like it's building. It feels like it's going somewhere. It feels like parts of a coherent and cohesive whole. The first season, until it tied in with the main universe, it felt like it was treading water and going nowhere. But it's not doing that anymore. It's got its feet on the ground and it's headed firmly in a direction, and that just makes the show so much more interesting. It does not feel like it's treading water anymore or trying to maintain some status quo between movies. It now actually feels like it's part of that universe, and it's a relevant part of that universe. So I am excited for it to come back. I've been watching Agent Carter in the meantime. Once the last of those episodes airs, I may give my thoughts on that. Well, I guess that's about it for me. So have you been following Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D? Do you think that this season is better than the first one? Did you actually like the first one better? If so, I definitely want to hear why. Drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.